What's going on, hikers? In today's video we are talking about gear, and that gear specifically is the Jetboil. And this is not the old large Jetboil. This is called the Jetboil Stash. So we're going to unbox it today during the video. We're going to take some first looks. I'm going to tell you my thoughts on it. In fact, the video is going to go like this. Got my little cheat sheet here. I'm going to show you what's in the package. I'm going to show you how the stove works with the cook pot. I'm going to weigh out the pieces and put those on the screen for you individualized, because I think the whole thing's supposed to be 200 grams or 7.1 ounces. I'm going to tell you about the boil time, and I actually tested it out for myself. Then I'm going to go with the pros and cons so you can decide if it's a good fit for your backpacking style. If you're new to the channel, my name's Jeremiah Stringer, and here we talk about all things hiking and backpacking. So if you're into that kind of thing, consider subscribing to the channel. So first, let's start off with, what are you going to get as a consumer when you buy this off the shelf? I don't know why, but Jetboil decided to send me this. It's not sponsored by them, but I did get this for free. And they're like, hey, would you be willing to make a video on this? It's top secret. It's going to drop January 27th. And I was like, send me the info and I'll check it out. So I decided to try it out for myself. So I opened it up yesterday, just took a quick look at it so I could decide the things that I liked and didn't like about it and just give you some information. This is what it's going to look like if you just go to a store or you order it online. It's going to come in this packaging, and everything is inside of this cook pot. And then let's take it apart and see what's inside. Now, I did go ahead and remove the instructions and all that. I have them laying over here next to me. So keep in mind, you're going to get like a user guide and that kind of thing that tells you how the stove works. But if we take it out of the packaging, it's going to look like this. So you can see it's got the lid. It's got a handle on top, which we'll talk more about in a minute. It says pinch me. So if you pinch the handle, it'll fold down. Then if you take off the lid, the fuel canister, this is just a novelty one. There's not actual fuel in here, but the fuel canister goes inside of the lid. And then you'll also get the stove, which is in this little pouch. I'll show it to you in a second. You'll get a fuel stabilizer, which you put on the bottom of a fuel canister, different sizes, and that's it. You get the cook pot too. Let's check out and see how the stove actually works with the cook pot. Now the stove comes in this little bag, and it has a picture on there, so I guess you know which bag the stove goes in. And then on the back, it's going to show you pretty much how this and the other things you're going to put inside the cook pot stack. It's got a nested design they call it. The stove, it looks like this, and you can see it's got these little arms. So those will actually fold out or rotate, if you will. So if we rotate it open, now your stove looks like this. And the fuel nozzle, actually, it twists around the stem where this is going to screw onto whatever fuel canister you're using. I think Jetboil heavily suggests that you use only Jetboil fuel, but I mean, I don't have any here, so we're just going to be using this 4-season propane and isobutane mix. So let's go ahead and put this actually on here so you can see. So after you get the actual stove screwed on, you can see, well, maybe you can't see, but there's little notches where the cook pot sits on top of the stove. And it gives it a little groove, so it's a lot harder for this stove to get knocked off, or the cook pot rather. You know, you can hear it rattling there. It's because I'm banging it back and forth to see how well it's going to stay on there. So that's really cool. And I mean, that's about all there is to how the stove works. You literally just turn it on and you take a lighter. It doesn't have a striker on it, which is going to shed a little bit of weight, but you'll need a lighter. You just turn on the fuel, and I mean, that's it. It's going to sound like a jet engine, right? They call it Jetboil for a reason. Now the little stand, I don't ever take these, but they are good if you are somebody who is really prone to like spilling stuff, or you're clumsy. Sometimes I'm a bit clumsy. You basically just sit this on the ground, and it gives you a stabilization or a place to stabilize your fuel can. And then your fuel can just tucks in there, and then you have a really wide base, so you're even less likely to spill whatever that you're cooking. And then whenever you're boiling your water or cooking your food, take this fuel canister out of the lid. The lid actually will snap on there. I probably just lay it on top if I was cooking in here, but it snaps closed, and there's some features that I want to talk about on here. Now, I'm not writing this down as I go, but as I'm editing the video, I'll put over here on the side to show what each individual piece weighs. So the first thing I'm weighing is the lid, and I'll do it in grams. It weighs 16 grams. The cook pot with the handle weighs 130 grams. And then the stove, it weighs 58 grams. And if you want to take the fuel stabilizer too, it weighs another 26 grams. So if we total that up, you can see it here. See how true that the packaging is to what this stuff actually weighs. Now for the boil time, I was testing this out last night, and it is pretty accurate to what Jetboil says the boil time is. Now, on their packaging, it says 2.5 minutes. I don't know if that's for a liter of water, if that's for 2 cups of water, so that's a little bit vague. I did 2 cups of water boiling, and it took about 2 to 2.5 minutes. 2 minutes, 18 seconds, if I remember right, is specifically about how long it took to reach a rolling boil. So, depending on how much water you're going to be boiling, I'm sure that could be more or it could be less. I just picked 2 cups because, like, if I fix mashed potatoes or one of those instant meals like a Mountain House or Peak Refuel or something like that, a lot of times they take 2 cups. So I thought that would be a pretty good mark. Now for my favorite part of the video, I like to talk about all the things that I like when it comes to this specific piece of gear. First, I want to start with the cook pot. Inside, the way I knew that I had 2 cups in here is there's little markings in milliliters and in ounces. So I know 8 ounces is a cup, boom, done. It goes all the way up to 0.8 liters or 800 milliliters. So I don't know what that is in cups or, excuse me, ounces, but I'm sure future Jeremiah editing this video is going to put it in here. The next thing I like is the nested design. Everything fits inside of this cook pot. And one super cool thing is, since everything fits inside, the fuel canister actually goes, it has snaps on the lid. So you snap it on the lid, and it says on this novelty item, stash your spark here. Basically what that means is take a mini Bic lighter and you can put it between your fuel canister and the lid. And then there's a certain way that you put everything in here so it fits. Basically this is offset a little bit, so your stove is going to go vertical and it'll go in like that. So the reason I like that the fuel canister can go into the lid is because I've had my fuel canisters, I'll just stick them inside of my cook pots and then it scratches it up. And this thing, I know the stove is for a fact titanium. I think this is titanium as well. And whenever you scratch it up, sometimes it can lose that whole non-stick coating. And that's not good, right? You don't want your food sticking while you're cooking it. Another cool thing about the lid is the fact that it has this little lip on it. So there's a pour spout and there is a vent, and you can drink out of this pour spout as well because it has this little lip. Some people buy those like duck lips or whatever you call them that goes on the side of your cook pot. So whenever you're drinking, you can drink out of this cook pot. You don't have to have an extra cup and you won't burn your lips because this thing is extremely hot once you get done boiling water. And if you're just gonna pour your coffee in there and drink it out of here, you'll have to literally wait until it cools down if you don't have some of those lips. So this lid, it has it built in. So if you can snap it on and you can pour through the spout, or you can see there, it's got the lips. So you can just drink straight out of here. You don't have to carry that extra little piece of gear. And I did notice this too. It looks like Jetboil is being very intentional with showing you how to use the product and how to stack it, because the stuff sack that the little stove goes in to keep it from scratching your pot, it has something similar to what you're seeing right now. So another thing I like about this is it has a handle. I much prefer the handle over Jetboil's original design on their flash. It basically is a sleeve, and that sleeve is good because it keeps you from burning your hand and you can grab a hold of the entire cook pot. But I'm not a huge fan of that. I would much rather have the handle so I can just sit it on top of the stove. Next up on our pros list is the boil time. It actually had a pretty quick boil time, right? 2.5 minutes. That's very fast. Jetboil is known for, it has its role, it has its niche. It is boil water super quickly and cook anything that you're using boiling water for. So I compared it. I looked up pretty much the stats for a few different stoves. Some ones by MSR, like the Pocket Rocket 2, the Pocket Rocket Deluxe. I looked up I think it's called the Wind Burner, and some others, and each of those were around 3 to 3.5 minutes, depending on how much water you put in there. So I would say one of the pros definitely is how fast it's going to boil water for you. Next up, we have the accessory. Now, like I said earlier, I normally don't take these, but it is nice that just included in there is the fuel stabilizer. Also, one of the pros, and I mentioned this earlier, it is the stove has notches for you to use that your cook pot sits directly inside of. So this is what I'm talking about. These little notches here, that's perfect because it means that Jetboil has thought out their design, and they have designed it in a way that everything fits perfectly together. Now, you do have some other grooves, so maybe you don't want to take this cook pot. Maybe you're somebody who needs a smaller cook pot or a larger cook pot, or maybe you're using like an ultralight frying pan, if you consider, I guess, any extra frying pan an ultralight item. It has these grooves, and that is going to create friction to keep your cook pot from sliding off. So even if you're using a different brand's cook pot, and you just want to use Jetboil's Stash stove, you can do that. Also, I love the fact that the cook pot, this thing, I mean, it's not huge, but it's also not tiny. It's a good in-between, 0.8 liters. This is gonna cook pretty much anything that I'm gonna take on the regular, like instant mashed potatoes or ramen or something that I'm gonna use a stove for that I'm boiling water with. And then last for the pros, this cook pot and the whole set in general, this kind of goes both ways. It's the weight, it's a pro and a con. We'll go with the pro part for this section of the video. The pro is if you're looking at upgrading and you already have a Jetboil system, you're like, I love Jetboil, I want to stay with Jetboil, but I feel like the Flash or one of the other models that come before this one is too heavy. This is much more lightweight, right? You're saving from 13 ounces to 7 ounces, you're saving quite a bit of weight on just your cook set if you're upgrading to this one weight-wise. Now for the cons. This is my least favorite part of the video for a couple of reasons. One, I hate to be a downer, and two, Jetboil was nice enough to send this to me, but look, I gotta shoot it to you straight. Not every piece of gear is gonna fit everybody's budgets and everybody's needs. So let's not skip this part. So the first con, the price. Hey, I think Jetboil sent me the information and said that the MSRP on this is $129.95. And you're probably thinking, wow, that is super expensive. Now hold on just a second. It may not fit in your budget, but that doesn't mean it doesn't fit in everybody's. Or maybe it does fit in your budget. I have no idea. But for me personally, my go-to is the Pocket Rocket Deluxe, and that thing was $70 just for the stove. No cook pot, nothing else. And then I do the GSI Soloist cook set, and that does come with a little collapsible spork, and it comes with a little cup that goes with it. But that set is over 50 bucks. So if you add those two things together, it's pretty much the same price of the system that I currently use. So con, it's definitely a little pricier than some of the other systems that you could go with. I mean, if you really want to, if you want to go super budget, you could have an entire system for 25 bucks. The second con that I wanted to mention is we talked about how that this cook set is smaller and more compact than the previous models, but it is bigger and heavier than a lot of the models out there. I know that some people are really into keeping everything as compact as possible, and this may not be the right cook set for you. So for instance, you could go with something like a Toaks 375 milliliter cup. Now I won't, because it's not enough cook room for what I like to bring. and that's okay. But if you're somebody who's just bringing Mountain House and you need to rehydrate those by boiling water, that's fine. If you want to go with a stove that is more compact, something like the BRS, then that's fine too. But that is one of the cons, that this thing is bigger and heavier than some of the other systems that are out there. Now, I keep comparing it to my system that I typically take on trail with me, which is the Pocket Rocket Deluxe and the GSI Soloist kit. This this thing is about 100 or so grams less than the kit that I take. So I'm kind of shooting myself in the foot here. I take heavier weight items, so this would actually save me a little bit of weight taking it on trail. The next con I want to talk about is how loud that the Jetboil Stash stove is. Now, people sometimes will complain in my videos whenever I'm cooking something, not with this stove, but with others, and they'll be like, man, that stove is so loud, how do you take that? And I'm like, I never even really thought about it. So if you're somebody who, if your stove is not quiet, you want something that just whispers, maybe this stove isn't for you. It is Jetboil, and it's like, you know, whenever you have it turned on. So keep that in mind as you're shopping and checking out these stoves. One other con that I'm not too sure about, so take this with a grain of salt as I'm saying it. I don't know what the fuel consumption is like on this stove. I haven't had a chance to take it out on trail to test it yet. So I'm not gonna lie to you and say the fuel consumption is good or bad. Now, Jetboil claims that one of the best parts about this stove is it conserves fuel. I literally just don't know. Okay, so if you want to take their word for that, that's fine. But until I get it out and actually test it and maybe make an actual review video of what I thought about how the stove works for me, then I can't really speak to that. So it may be a con, it may be not, but I figured I'd throw it in there. So tell me in the comments below, what do you think about this video? Do you like the unboxing things, especially when it's a new piece of gear that I get? What else would you like to see? You know, if you enjoyed, give me one of these, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you in the next one.